My boyfriend told his friends he didn't want me to have his baby because I was getting too fat during pregnancy. So I left him, gave birth, and had a glow up. I then found someone who actually loved me, and that made my ex go psycho. He crashed our wedding and forced me to take everything from him. Josh and I have been together for the last 4 years, and I am currently 7 months pregnant. We met through a dating app, hitting it off over a shared love of nerdy comics and lame action movies. Our relationship moved at a pace we liked, moving in after 2 years, becoming parents to a cat after 3, and learning that I was pregnant last January. The day we found out was the best of my life. He had been pushing for us to have a baby, and when I came around to it and we saw those 2 lines, we were elated. We immediately started planning for the arrival of our bundle of joy. Well, in reality, it was mostly me planning everything and Josh just going with it. He didn't even seem to care what gender the baby was going to be, which was extremely odd given how excited he was beforehand. About 2 months into my pregnancy, he started making questionable comments about us having the kid. It wasn't anything too negative, but enough to plant a seed of doubt in my mind. Whenever I showed him potential cribs, strollers, or nurseries, he'd say, "Why can't they just sleep beside us?" Or, "Why don't we leave it for now and decide later?" I brushed it off as him being nervous at first, but then came the ignoring of my questions about the baby. I'd sent him pictures or themes for nurseries, and all he'd say in response was, "Sure," or "Cool, looks fine, I guess." He blamed it on him being stressed, saying he can't handle all this. I remember feeling very hurt by this. My bump had started really growing. I was in more and more pain by the day. My hormones were all over the place. I'd randomly start crying out of nowhere. All I wanted was to lie down and give my body a break, but I was pushing through, planning everything, and here he was, too stressed to help. I still pushed all my feelings away, until last month when he started hanging out with a coworker named Bill more often. I remember begging him to stay home, telling him I was in a lot of pain and needed him here, but he'd just brush me off because he needed to distress. He'd go to Bill's 2 or 3 times per week, and when he'd come home and find me throwing up in the bathroom, he'd barely check on me. Sure, he brought me a blanket and some water, but not much more than that. It got to a point where he stopped showing me any sort of affection. I couldn't get as much as a hug goodnight off him, much less a kiss or anything more intimate. I remember talking to my best friend Susie about it, and she told me some guys can act this way before becoming fathers, and suggested I get him a parenting book to ease his nerves. So last week, I got him a book suited for anxious expecting fathers. I even cooked him a 3-course meal from scratch, while freaking pregnant, so it would be ready for him by the time he got back from work. Well, that night was a disaster. Josh barely looked at me all while we ate our food, and when I gave him the book, he dropped a bomb. He wanted me to terminate the pregnancy. I was stunned. He was the one who pushed for the baby in the first place. I pressed him, and he said he's realized he's not sure if he's ready to be a dad, referencing how Bill regrets having his kids. I wanted to break down and cry, wondering how he was letting his coworker affect his judgment. The rest of the night was silent and extremely tense. We didn't speak until the morning, when I headed out to grab breakfast alone and think about it. I remember calling Susie, and she talked me through everything. I felt slightly better coming home that evening. I had a clearer head and had made a mental note of all the talking points I needed to have with Josh, until I got a text from Richard, one of Josh's other coworkers. He asked me if I was okay. We had only met twice before, so I was extremely confused. I responded that I was, then asked why he was texting me. He immediately dropped the subject. I wanted to ignore it, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I called him, and when he answered, he sounded nervous, like he was hiding something. I questioned him over and over until he spilled. The coworkers were all congratulating Josh on the pregnancy, but when Bill asked Josh if he was ready for his wife to never be the same, Josh said he had concerns. When Richard interrupted, asking Josh what he meant, Josh said something like, "She's just getting fatter. It's not pretty to look at, and I've seen the horror stories. Women have a kid and then become too lazy to lose the fat. I don't want to sleep with her and pretend I find it hot for the rest of my life." He then chuckled, trying to play it off as some joke. Richard said he and some guys called Josh out for that,